I'm Delilah.
And I'm Sana.
And we are from I Am Every Girl. And this is Maya, who is the person that we are interviewing today. And she loves animals, is a vegan, and she has written several books for children and adults of all ages. Maya, we know that you have written amazing books.
Thank you.
So what inspired you to write these books?
Well, since I was your age, I've loved writing. I've always loved writing. When I was really young, I made little books with drawings and my text. And as I grew up, I just kept writing. And as a grown-up, I continued to want to write. So when I was just after college, I really wanted to write children's books. It was my dream. And after a few years of trying really hard to write a children's book, I got my big break. And a publisher wanted to publish one of my books. And that was when my first book came out. And I've just kept on going. Over the years, I've written articles too for grown-ups on things that I was very interested in, and that grew into writing books for adults too.
Out of all of the books that you've written, which would you say is your favorite and most made an impact on people?
Oh, books are like a chicken with all of her chicks. You know, the mama hen loves all her little baby chicks. But I would say, if I had to pick one, my book, Our Farm by the Animals of Farm Sanctuary, is very close to my heart, as they all are. But with Our Farm, when I got a deal from a book publishing company for that book, I had just been diagnosed with cancer. And I saw that book as very important to do in the face of a really scary illness. It's about all the animals who live at Farm Sanctuary, which is an organization that rescues and advocates for farm animals. I had gone there and seen that it was a really beautiful and peaceful place, that they honored the lives of farm animals and saw their need for protection. And I saw it as a really important truth that people needed to see. I felt that people needed to see this truth, that farm animals needed our love. And it was a truth that I wanted to share with other people. And so I decided to write the book, and it was very important to me. And the artist, Robert Rawe-Zakanich, did a beautiful job of portraying all the beauty of those animals.
Does your passion for animals impact you being a vegan?
Yes, so that's exactly why I'm vegan. I know some people are vegan for health reasons or other reasons, environmental reasons. But the first reason that I became vegan was because I loved animals, and I had done a lot of reading at Farm Sanctuary's website about how animal products, their production, hurt animals, and I didn't want to be a part of that. I love the animals, and I wanted to be their friends as best I could. So I stopped eating all animal products. I started by being vegetarian. And then when I was ready, I stopped eating the rest of the animal products that were in my diet.
So we know that you are a cancer survivor. What advice would you give to every person with cancer right now?
When I had cancer, the thing that helped me most emotionally, because it's a big emotional ordeal that you go through in addition to a physical ordeal, is to maintain one's peace as much as possible. Through things like meditation, restorative yoga, keeping the people around you, the people who you really love and who really love you. For me, that was a really important part of it. From a health perspective, I read a book when I was going through chemotherapy, which is one of the treatments for cancer. I read a book called The China Study, which was all about how animal products sort of fuel the fire of certain diseases. At that point, I realized that being vegan was also an important part of maintaining my health in the face of cancer. So from a health perspective, I would encourage anyone with a cancer diagnosis to consider a plant-based diet. Doing the work that's really important to you when you can, when you have enough energy, because that also helps keep you going in the face of such a scary diagnosis.
vegetarian.
Okay.
So what advice would you give to a young person who wanted to become vegan or vegetarian?
Okay, so when you want to become vegan and vegetarian, that's great. You're doing something great for yourself and great for the animals and great for the environment. It can be challenging for anyone because it's like learning a whole new language. You're used to eating certain things, you're used to buying certain things in the store. So just like when you learn a new language, you have to learn the translations of certain words. You want to learn how to translate the foods you love into new vegan and vegetarian foods. And there are a lot of direct substitutes, such as veggie burgers for the old burgers. And then there's some indirect substitutes. So if you cook, you might find that you replace eggs with various different things, like flax seeds or vegan egg, or you might find different products to replace those. It might take a little while, to figure it all out, but eventually, you'll get it. And as a young person, living in a household with non-vegans can be tough. So it's important to remember that you weren't vegan once, you weren't vegetarian once, and neither were your parents, or in most cases. And it might take them a little while to get it, but we want to treat them with love and respect while we're trying to educate them on the things that we've learned for ourselves.
Does being vegan make you feel different?
I would say for me, yes, definitely. On both an emotional / spiritual level, and also on a physical level. I feel better when I'm eating vegan physically, especially when I'm eating a more whole foods, plant-based diet. So fewer processed foods, not as many breads. I avoid sugar. When I eat a whole foods, plant-based diet, I feel my best physically, and I have great energy. But spiritually and emotionally, when I went vegan, I immediately felt more of a connection with all animals, because somewhere in my head, I knew that I wasn't hurting living beings who I cared about. So we automatically feel better. I did, just knowing I wasn't causing harm in the world that was totally unnecessary.
Which animal would you say that is harmed the most, and which is your favorite animal?
Oh my gosh. I mean, that's a really good question, but I have to say I feel terrible for all of these animals who are suffering, but the baby chicks do come to mind. All of the suffering is terrible, but when I visualize or think about the baby male chicks who are killed right after they're born only because they're boys, and don't ever get to have any kind of a life, I really feel so sad. But there are a lot of animals I feel really sad for. And who are my favorite animals?
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's like the mother hen with all her baby chicks. I love them all. I felt special connections with, I think, every kind of animal. Mm-hmm. And there's one animal who's very special to me, who's named after my dad, Martin, and that animal is a moon bear, and he lives in China, and I adopted him. In China, moon bears are farmed for their bile. It's a different kind of farming than we do here, but it's used in traditional medicine, and there are many herbal replacements. So there's no reason any bear has to be farmed for bile. But Martin bear is a moon bear who was rescued by Animals Asia, an organization in Asia. And I sponsored Martin and named him after my dad. So he's very special to me.
Is there any financial issues becoming a vegan or finding the certain ingredients, replacements?
That's a great question too. So a lot of people do believe that it's very expensive to be a vegan, and I think that has to do with all the processed foods that are on the market that are very expensive. So some of the veggie burgers are very expensive. Some of the vegan mac and cheese boxes are kind of expensive. But if you're eating a whole foods plant-based diet, if you're eating lettuce and tomatoes and beans and rice and peppers and all those amazing vegetables and legumes and grains, you can keep it really affordable, and you're actually cutting out all the animal products and all the money you would spend on those. So you're doing pretty well financially.
When writing your books, do you write it along as you go, or do you plan it out before you write it?
So it really depends on the book. There's a children's picture book I just wrote, So Many Cats in My Lap, and it doesn't have a publisher yet. But when I sat down to write it, I didn't know what was going to happen. I just loved how my cats piled up in my lap, and I wanted to share that story. And I wrote and I wrote, and it just came out the way it came out. But with a book like Vegan Love, which I wrote for adults, that book I mapped out very clearly, and I had an outline, and I had a plan, and I had it on my schedule when I would interview who and when I would transcribe those interviews. So it can be very different depending on the project.
We are going to play some word games with Maya. So what is the first thing that pops into your mind when you hear the word love?
Compassion.
Would you rather roller coasters or water slides?
I'm so scared of roller coasters that I would take a water slide any day over a roller coaster.
So, do you like water parks more than amusement parks?
Yes, I like water parks a lot.
Would you rather cats or dogs?
Oh my gosh. I have 3 cats, so I'll just leave it at that. My household is filled with cats, and I would love to have a dog someday.
I'm going to play a game with Maya called Quick Fire, where I'm going to ask her questions and she has to respond immediately. Singing or dancing?
Dancing.
Ducklings or ducks?
Ducklings.
Cars or buses?
Cars.
Now I'm going to ask you some would you rather questions. Would you rather fall into a pit with snakes or with mice?
Mice.
Would you rather only be able to eat fruit for the rest of your life, or only be able to eat vegetables?
Fruit. I have a sweet tooth.
What's the first word that comes to mind when you hear the word feminism?
Yes.
And would you rather never see an animal in your life or jump in a pool full of lemon acid with cuts all over your body?
Oh my goodness. That's a really tough question. I guess I would take never seeing an animal in my life, but I hope I never have to make that decision.
And would you rather write children's books for the rest of your life or adult books for the rest of your life?
If I had to choose, I think I would write children's books for the rest of my life.
And what's the first word that comes to mind when someone says courage?
Grandpa, because my grandfather played the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz, and he was all about courage.
In the movie?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa! That's my favorite movie.
Oh, that's so cool.
I love that movie.
Thank you. I'm thanking you on behalf of my grandfather. But thank you. That's really nice to hear. That's great.
Out of all the amazing women in the world, which would you say inspires you the most, and which one you admire?
The woman who inspires me the most and who I admire the most is my mother, and her name is Jane Lar. And she embodies so many of the things that I think are wonderful in all people, not just women. She's creative and spiritual and smart. She made a real career for herself when she didn't have major college degrees. She started from scratch and became a really successful woman in publishing, and she puts really amazing things into the world, so I really respect and admire her.
What advice would you give to girls our age?
Always live your truth and stand in your truth, and not let other people tell you that something isn't true that you know is true. And that's really important to me, and I wish someone had told me that a long time ago.
Thank you for coming here today.
Thank you, Maya. It's been a pleasure to meet you.
It's been a pleasure to meet all of you too. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching!